Hi everyone, Robert Burroughs here. I'm here with Scott Colburn of the FDA, CDRH, also chair of TC 210, many other claims to fame. We could get into all that if you like, but we are just wrapping up, 5 days together here at AAMI Nexus. It's been a very busy week.
Yes, it has been.
It's a very busy week. So I thought we could recap some of the activities and share with folks some of your priorities and FDA's priorities and things we're working on. So,
well, first, just a huge thanks to Amy, the entire staff. It's been an amazing engagement. I'm hearing from all the members what a great event or series of events this has been. This has been a very compressed, and I think that was a concern at first, but people are so thankful now that they got to learn a lot about a lot of different topics that are critical to how we are trying to improve health, trying to push that needle of innovation, and try to make sure we have really good tools in how to do that for all the stakeholders involved.
And we were delighted to have Dr. Tarver join us this morning and lay out some of the priorities you guys are working on within CDRH, and hitting that point again and again. How is what we are doing driving directly to patient outcomes?
Yeah, and I think it was her presentation. It was really covered almost every major event that went on over the last 5 days, and I think it's a good testament to know that are we communicating together? Are we working together? And it does take more than one stakeholder, or it takes more than it really takes that village of stakeholders to come together and build these things. And I think Michelle's reflection of what are the priorities. It's not just the FDA's priorities; these are all our priorities as we are all patients as well, and we do care about these things. And it's not just being the patient, and we'll talk about this later, but it's also, how do we make sure we stay healthy?
Right, exactly. Yeah, health, not just recovery or whatever the right phrase might be. So let's talk about the events of the week. And we started way back when on Monday with the World Medical Device Standards Congress. So tell folks a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, so a couple years ago, in seeing what could we do better in standards, our standards are in so many different areas, managed by many different countries or other standard developing organizations, and it's hard sometimes to know what's really going on. But more importantly, we can benefit by understanding each other and working together. A couple years ago, I started having a chair call with different technical committees, and we just had our TC Chair Unplugged.
We did.
That group has actually who we talk monthly with.
Yeah.
But we needed to be bigger. And my closing statement in that session was, I wanted to have a Chairs Unplugged the size of that room. Hundreds of people coming together to try to talk strategically about standards with some goals, not just to make better standards or regulatory ready standards, but also ensure that we're working together to not duplicate. We're working with other stakeholders, regulatory authorities, and conformity assessment bodies, understanding how users, patients, clinicians, and so forth all need to know this, but do it from a global harmonized way. There isn't any one entity that can do that. So we have to pull entities together, and we do really appreciate some of the leadership and availability AAMI's brought to the table to help us have our second meeting for this.
This is number 2 now.
Last year we met in Japan alongside or just before the IMDRF meeting, and that was a great success. And it has awakened a few of our stakeholders to realize, wow, this is a great venue for us to kind of be like a big funnel and then bring that data together and then share it with the stakeholders from a single source, where our industry can be represented and all their stakeholders, in this space, because the health technology or medical technology sector is vast, and there's a lot of different products and a lot of different standards and a lot of different ideas, and working together is how we're going to do it.
Yeah, I think the thing that resonated with me the most about some of the conversations that we had on all of this is that, we're in such a period of high pace of change. Complexity is already very, very high, as you say, the size of the ecosystem, et cetera, and we can't really afford some of the inefficiencies, overlaps, conflicts, whatever the right language is. But we really need to work together as a standards development community and align our activities in a way that we can move quickly, because there's so many opportunities, so many challenges in the space right now. And I loved the meeting on Monday. We had about 50 folks there, give or take, and it was a collection of regulators. Of course, you guys were there. Other multinational organizations or international organizations representing different parts of the world, SDOs, We had med device manufacturers. I mean, it was a really good mix. And I think if we can find a way to keep that energy up and coordinate those activities, I think the benefit for ultimately the patient, but the intermediate customer, our medical device manufacturers, our clinicians, folks that are trying to use these standards, if we can be well organized in the work that we do and make their lives a little more efficient in the way that they do what they do, then the patient benefits, right? And so we look forward to supporting you on this. It's a big ambition, but I think everything that you laid out in the first day is achievable in terms of that coordination, all of it.
Yeah, I mean, the hardest problem sometimes when you bring in a bunch of experts is really identifying what is the problem we're trying to solve.
Right.
It's not what can we do, it's what should we do.
What should we do? You emphasize
and
that a number of times.
And I, in my technical committee and all the working groups I've been a part of, it's always that, because there's a lot of things we can do, but if it isn't something we should do, then all that work goes into the shelf.
Right.
And that's where it lives. So we do want to make sure we're doing things that are purposeful. We need to be nimble. We need to accelerate what we can do for tool development and standards and bring in the community together. And so these types of venues are great ways to really make sure we're thinking about this together and be challenged. We were challenged at the Congress, even with the name of it, right? The World Medical Device Standards Congress, and people said, well, what about some of these other emerging technologies or combination products, or how can we make sure people will actually want to know what this is about? So we're going to be starting from scratch to really think about how can we do this to bring the people that we need, that we know want to be there. We have to make sure they get there. This is for you guys there, and we want to make sure that we can bring that part to this.
And if folks want to get involved, we're sort of at the stage of formalizing the charter, getting all the T's and C's in place. And if folks want to get involved, they can reach out to you, reach out to me.
Absolutely.
We're happy to have anyone join us that'll help us move the ball forward. So you mentioned what should we be doing, right? Not what can we do. Well, we could do this particular standard or that particular thing, but should we? And that's the sort of what, but then the how. So regulatory ready standards came up in the context of WMDSC and in the context of almost every meeting that we had over the last 5 days as we're talking about what we're doing. So, there's a very obvious question, what is a regulatory ready standard? And I heard a lot of different answers to that, but from your perspective, what's a regulatory ready standard look like?
Yeah, interestingly enough, it isn't a standard for the regulator, but it is a standard that does what we believe standards are supposed to do, which is be able to deliver repeatable, reproducible, high quality results that we can use to help tell our story. A lot of times though, our standards aren't necessarily built in quantitative ways. We use a lot of qualitative mechanisms in there, and then sometimes that is necessary, but it's not necessarily clear how that is supposed to be conveyed. So the important thing is making sure that that standard is clear in communicating what the outcomes, the measurements, if it's a performance issue, if it's what it process a standard, but it's clear and it can be provided in a consistent way.
Right.
People want the regulators to be objective and consistent, but if the information that we're receiving isn't that way, then it becomes a challenge for us to measure into that as well. So, part of it is just making sure that the standards are a little bit more than just a fuzzy recipe book that tells you add these 4 ingredients, but didn't tell you how much of each.
Right.
Or throw it in the oven, but how hot? And I say that laughingly, but there are ways when we see how standards are used where there's a lot of inconsistencies, and we've learned a lot over the last several years in how the stakeholders that use standards, not just the developers that are putting them together or the manufacturers that we think are the only users, and then it's just regulators that assess them. But there's conformity assessment bodies in this. And we have learned a lot from some of our committees in our space on how that relationship has strengthened the standards, how they continually improve it, and how that delivers a better, quote unquote, regulatory ready standard. And that helps everyone in their processes. It shortens times on what is needed to figure out, did we get it right? What do those outputs mean to us? Does it really fit into the design of what our device is for? And it helps the regulator have that dialogue through the regulatory submission or whatever process that they're working on, and understanding that. And hopefully it reduces time in the regulatory area for us not being in the way of getting it into the market, but helping deliver it and get it quickly into the market.
Right, and I think that was a theme, and I always appreciate when this emerges as a theme, because it comes up from time to time. But I think especially in the sessions that we had over the various days where we were delighted FDA participated in those heavily, and the theme that came out was we are here to do the right thing by patients, but we're here to help. And Michelle, Dr. Tarver stressed it in what she said. We're about safety, but we want to get these products to market to help patients. And I was involved in one panel that it was repeated again and again. Come and have this conversation with FDA. Let us help you in your process. And there's so many programs that she went through and you guys have set up to help folks. But that dialogue, it's all about clarity, right? And you guys are seeking clarity. I know the manufacturers want clarity. Patients want clarity so they can get devices that help them. And yeah, anyway, I always want to bring that out because I really appreciate how open you guys are, not only in these settings, but in everything that you do in your day-to-day work. And I want to encourage folks, since I was in sessions where your folks kept saying this, reach out. If you have a question, reach out to FDA,
Absolutely.
Get involved. If you have a question about standards or application, reach out to us. And we will keep trying to make things more clear with regulatory ready standards and all the other things that we do, but that connectivity is so important in addition to that. So, but we do have a white paper on this, right? On regulatory ready standards.
Yeah, so you know, we've had, you know, for a number of years we've had a few tools out there that we have pointed to. IMDRF wrote a guidance on optimizing standards for regulatory use. The agency has, you know, appropriate use of voluntary consensus standards. Right. A lot of those things, but we need to start pulling it all together. So yeah, AAMI helped champion with some of its members underneath the Committee on Standards Strategy. We're getting all our numbers mixed up here after Alphabet Soup Week. And yeah, that white paper on is it optimizing standards for making regulatory ready standards is not just a repeat of that, but it's pulling this a little bit more and learning every year of more of what we are really trying to do to improve standards, improve standardization, and how that can help. But you know, you mentioned earlier, you know, being involved in communicating first. You know, communicating with stakeholders, whether it's, you know, calling a regulator, if the regulator, you know, if you have a question that the regulator can help you with. And we're not scary folks. We actually do like
You're actually not.
Getting phone calls. In fact, we learn from that. The more we hear from you, the more we can adjust to make sure, are we doing it right? You know, are we not a barrier to patient getting things to patients, but helping facilitate that. But also calling your you know, SDOs and you know, the organizations that are developing these tools. It's an amazing experience, and you really understand that everyone around that table cares about patient safety, wellness, and health for our nation, our country, you know, the world. And it's a powerful tool. So communication is very important because once we communicate, then we can do what I really preach on a lot, which is education. Right. But it's hard, you know, how do you know you're educating the right thing if you don't hear from people? So yeah, please give us a call. Yeah,
exactly. I think that's the key on all of these things. So I want to close out with one last area of focus, and that is a major sort of umbrella initiative, if you will, for FDA, and that's healthcare at home. Right. So that comes up time and time again, and it ties into so many other things that we're seeing, trying to do, connected health, data liquidity. Obviously, the emergence of you know, all of the new tools under the AI umbrella. You know how much I hate AI as a generic term. We need to talk about the specific tools underneath those, whether that's generative AI or agentic AI or whatever it might be. But say a little bit about the healthcare at home focus at FDA and what you think we need to do to support that and be successful with that.
Yeah, this has been a really amazing initiative.
And I should say it right. Home is the healthcare hub.
Yes,
Home is the healthcare hub. Sorry.
HHH, Home is the healthcare hub. Has really opened our eyes to kind of go into the direction of what we're hearing from a lot of authorities, which is it's not just about you getting treated in the hospital by medical devices, but also looking at wellness, looking at how can we get you out of the hospital or prevent you from needing to be even in the hospital. We do a lot in our homes, and getting better is also something we do in our homes, but we don't necessarily have that infrastructure of what we try to do with connectivity, with the ability to understand the data points that make this very successful, and to help empowering patients in patient preference areas of what they can do in the home side is an extremely important aspect to this. As Dr. Tarver spoke to just in our keynote closing today, Home as a Healthcare Hub is a very powerful way that we can advance those types of initiatives, and standards is a really critical building block for that. And we know that, as I mentioned, we're not even just talking about healthcare now. We're talking about wellness, and so there's other things outside of medical devices that are in this space, and it's not just AI.
Right,
we're talking about wellness devices. So we had panels on wellness devices here today. We have partnerships that were discussed between CTA and AAMI, and that is an amazing thing to see. You know, people that were kind of not, you know, in somewhat parallel areas, but not necessarily. You know, it was different yards,
right,
or maybe a different neighborhood in the same city. But now you guys are merging together in ways to try to help, you know, the technologies communicate what they're trying to do to help us make sure we have those abilities to do this. And it's going to be a really great initiative. There's pilots that are taking place on this, as was mentioned, the Temple pilots and the challenge initiatives and stuff, right? Yeah, a lot of words all this week.
Yeah.
And I encourage people to go to the website at fda.gov and look up Home as a Healthcare Hub and learn more about that and start thinking, well, what's needed for this? You know, we're still working on that ourselves. You know, we're pulling in our stakeholders, and there's a lot of opportunities through things like collaborative communities, all the way to standards development, and seeing what we can do for this in the future. And I think it's going to really help us bring the technologies that we do have, and understand how we can put them into the environments to help, bring in more wellness and health into what we have in our day-to-day. In a much improved way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm impressed by FDA's approach, or the CDRH's approach to this, because one thing that got stressed again today was here are the areas where we're exercising our regulatory authority. And then just as interesting to me is, here are some areas we're not. This is a safe space for experimentation. These are the swim lanes that if you're doing these things, these are wellness devices. But that FDA is not excluding that from their purview in terms of what they're looking at and trying to coordinate, but they're saying this is a safe space from a regulatory perspective. It's not something we're going to exercise oversight over. So there's a lot of innovation happening there, but it's not like they're ignoring it. They want to be, it's all connected. And then here's where those lines are that we get into a different set of processes. But I'm very impressed by how at the center sort of the patient experience is in the way you guys are approaching this initiative. And like you said, it's not just med devices, right? And we even talked today about what is a med device? That gets kind of interesting, and that's where some of that discussion around where the line was, et cetera, et cetera. But it's certainly something we're going to be focusing on. And once again, I think all these pieces fit together. WMDSC, as we look at coordination and both opportunities and standards, gaps in standards, et cetera. You're right, CTA, us, there are others, but we can all be part of that collaborative and make smart decisions about how to divide this work up and get it done in an efficient way. So anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
I guess what's going on in our space of, where we are at and where we're going is an exciting time, and I really hope that people are able to get more involved in this. I think the last several years coming out of COVID, there's a lot of changes that do make it hard for some people to feel that they can get involved. But I always say, give us a call. We'll find a way.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I'm looking forward already to next year's Nexus.
That's right. We'll be at National Harbor in about a year from now.
And I think it'll be a great event. I can just see where growth is going to be happening throughout the year and ideas, and we're very excited to be a participant in that area. And it's just been a really good experience. We're excited to see where we're going with standards, with both at the national and at the global stage, and how we're trying to help do that in ways to harmonize and not just do things for a single initiative, but to bring everyone together. It's an important aspect of what we want. It's what we all believe in. It's part of our vision, our mission.
There's a lot of passion here.
Yeah, for not just the agency, but if you look at our stakeholders, our companies, healthcare institutions, we all have that same vision, and we have that same mission that we want to put it together. And we appreciate organizations like AAMI to be one of those facilitators for that.
We are honored to work with you and support you and with the entire community. So. It's Friday afternoon, 5 days, we got it done.
Yes.
We'll let you get home and get some rest and start again on Monday.
Yes.
All right.
Thank
you, Scott. Appreciate it.